Acting Police Chief Kevin O'Connell, Mayor Jeanette McCarthy, as well as members of the City Council, District Attorney Beth Dunnigan, Detective Lieutenant William Donahue, and Trooper Stephen Crisco from our office, Detective Lieutenant Joseph Works Jr., Detective Sergeant Stephen McCarthy, Detective Michael Maub, Detective Tom Bryan, and Captain Jeff Rodley. We are here today to report that as a result of a long collaborative investigation, we were today formally charging Clavins Janvier in connection with a series of random attacks that occurred across the city of Waltham in November of 2020. To date, all of the attacks that have been reported in the media have now been charged. These attacks, which appear to be random, caused the community of Waltham to be in fear for several months. We hope that today's charges will bring a greater sense of safety with the news that we have identified that alleged perpetrator responsible for the attacks. We are grateful to the victims who have come forward, who have waited patiently as we have done this investigation, and particularly to the city residents who have cooperated with us, who have taken extra precautions, and have waited throughout this process to bring this really reign of terror to an end. I'd like to start by thanking our law enforcement partners at the Waltham Police, the Massachusetts State Police. Without them, this charging today would not have been possible. We all know, and we've reported on the details of these attacks, we all have the right, particularly in this time when we are suffering from so many other stresses, to be safe when we're traveling back and forth inside to our homes, to walk our dogs, or to do our job in the neighborhood. The fear, the very palpable fear that infiltrated the city of Waltham as a result of these attacks seriously jeopardized that sense of safety and security. The investigation was, as I said, long, and it is not lost on us at all that people continue to be afraid during that period of time. Some of the answers that we are able to give with respect to this case are that on December 11th of 2020, this defendant was arrested and charged with one incident in this series of attacks, and that was an incident that had taken place at a parking garage located on Turner Street in Waltham on November 11th. After the investigation conducted by the Waltham Police, the District Attorney's Office, and the Massachusetts State Police, that included, among other investigative avenues, an extensive review of cell phone data, records from cell phones, review of surveillance video, forensic testing, the execution of a number of search warrants, and extensive interviewing of victims and witnesses. Investigators were able to determine that that defendant charged in the November 11th incident was allegedly responsible for the additional 10 attacks that had occurred across the city. Mr. Janvier is now charged in connection with all of those 10 additional attacks on male victims throughout the month of November. During those assaults, this defendant allegedly attacked those victims using blunt objects, in addition to committing other serious physical assaults, causing serious injuries in multiple cases. Among those attacks are included the first reported assault, which took place at the Garden Crest apartment complex, an assault on a U.S. Postal Service mail carrier doing his job, several incidents where victims were knocked unconscious, and several where victims required hospitalization as a result of their injuries. Janvier has also been charged in connection with an additional incident that took place on November 24th, where he allegedly fired a gun at a motor vehicle leaving a Willow Street gas station after he had engaged in a verbal altercation with a man at the gas station parking lot. As a result of those allegations, he faces several additional firearms charges. In total, there are now 24 additional charges that were filed against the defendant. Those are outlined for you with greater specificity in the press release. Following his arrest on December 11th, the defendant had a dangerousness hearing at the Waltham District Court 10 days later, on December 21st. He was found to be dangerous. He is held without bail. He continues to be held without bail. It is our expectation that he will be arraigned on the new charges when he next appears in court on the 24th. And I'm now going to turn the podium over to Acting Chief O'Connell, who will speak about the community and the work of his department.
Thank you, Joyce. Good afternoon. Acting Chief O'Connell of the Waltham Police Department. These attacks truly were unprecedented at times for the citizens of Waltham and to the officers that serve the public each and every day. I can't tell you how proud I am of this organization. We all came together at a difficult time to bring this case to a conclusion. It took every resource available in Waltham PD, as well as the multiple partnerships throughout the Commonwealth and beyond, to bring this day to fruition. I truly understood the anxiety and the frustration of our citizens of Waltham when this case had few leads at the start and continues on for some time. The personnel that were assigned to this case, as well as the police department as a whole, were relentless in the pursuit of the perpetrators. They were wreaking havoc across the city. There is no doubt in my mind that at some point the person or persons involved will be brought to justice. The officers here, out in the street, every day are building relationships with the people in our community and solving problems each and every day. As an acting chief and a police officer for nearly 30 years, I can tell you that they are two of the biggest attributes that are needed in the community these days in policing. As this part of the investigation concludes, I'd like to especially thank some people. First off is Mayor McCarthy. I want to thank Mayor McCarthy for ongoing support of the police department and the trust he puts in us every day. And I want to thank former Chief Keith McPherson, who's at the helm when these brutal attacks first came out. And he utilized every resource we had in the department to bring it to an end. So thank you to Keith McPherson. I want to thank the Massachusetts State Police for their partnership and the multiple resources they provide, not only during this investigation, but other investigations at the same time. I also want to thank our neighboring surrounding police agencies, which include Watertown, Belmont, Newton, Weston, Lincoln, Lexington, as well as our ongoing regional partner in Nemlik, all of which offered their support during these most difficult times. I also want to thank the citizens of Waltham for coming, trusting in their police department, calling us with tips that we react to each and every day and responded to. I want to thank the victims for their courage and their strength to work with our investigators to help us come and get a subject in line if we need the arrest for. Thank you to them. Lastly, I want to thank the investigators who were assigned to this case. I want to thank our lead investigator, Detective Thomas Bryant, right there. Detective Mike Mark. Where is it? Way over there. And Detective Sergeant Steve McCarthy, right here. We're hands-on supervisor for this case and worked numerous hours through all the holidays, night and day for this case, and overseen by Lieutenant Joseph Brooks and Captain Detective Champion. So with that being said, there's one more person I want to thank, Detective Stephen Krusco from the Mass State Police. I found the CPAC unit. He came out every day and was working with us. Thank you very much for bringing this to a close. That's all I have to say right now. Thank you for coming.
DA,
We'll take a couple of questions.
DA, do you expect any charges to come from the U.S. Attorney's Office in relation to the attack on the mail carrier?
There is some discussion about that. I don't know when that will go.
Hey, Ryan, have you learned anything?
Okay, what do we know about this guy?
Well, look, we will hear more again when we arraign him on these charges. We know obviously he has that first charge. The court at that point found sufficient evidence to find him dangerous and to hold him without bail.
Have you learned anything about why these attacks happened? Because at the time, if I recall, no one was robbed. We didn't see.
No one was robbed. There does not appear to be, at this point in the investigation, any particular connection either between the victims and the defendant or the victims to each other. So to that extent, and given the wide range of ages of victims as well as the demographics of the victims, they appear to be aligned.
Why did it take so long for us to hear that someone was arrested or charged with any part of the case? And is anyone getting the $5,000 reward?
So there was a release at the time that the And although we did get various information, the actual identity of this alleged perpetrator was gathered through the investigative efforts. So no, there is no particular tip that led to identification of the perpetrator.
Was the cell phone data what tied the suspect to all the?
It was part of the
locations?
investigation.
And witness, ID?
Witness,
Okay.
there was witness interviews, there was cell phone records and data, there was surveillance video. This was really an example of a methodical, thorough investigation that involved information on a lot of fronts, including the witness and victim statements.
This investigation obviously took some time. What were some of the challenges that investigators faced?
Well, I think you have, first of all, as you will recall, at the time that the information was coming out, the attacks were continuing. So you are really sort of working on both feet. You are working on what you know about the past attacks, and you are also seeking to look at the present attack, trying to figure out are there connections. You know, this was a process, and it is a process that led to first the charging on the November 11th attack that happened in December, and then the additional charges today as a result of the other attacks.
How were the victims doing?
Obviously relieved, many still dealing with the after effects of what happened, but clearly relieved. You know, they, as the chief said, they put our trust in us, they were cooperative, they were helpful in every step of the investigation as well as other witnesses, and clearly relieved for us to be able to tell them that we have identified and charged the alleged perpetrator.
Are there long-term physical effects with some?
I don't know that at this point.
Any evidence of a motive for the attacks?
No, as I said, there appears to be no connection, no one was robbed. The demographics of the victims suggest that they were not in any way connected. I know there was some information early on that they may have been somewhat planned. That's planned in the sense that what we know at this point is the perpetrator appeared in some cases to have been waiting for someone. It just was clearly a case of somebody being in the place where he was at the wrong time, rather than he was looking for a particular person. Yes?
In mid-December, your office said basically that Clovis Janvier was not the suspect in a random attack. Can you tell me what changed to lead your office to decide that he was the suspect?
I think we did not necessarily respond to whether we were able to link him to the others. Obviously, the investigation took us to a different place.
What blunt objects were used?
There were a variety of allegations of objects. We don't necessarily know all of those. Many of the victims were struck from behind or to the side and only felt an object striking them.
What, if any, kind of history does the suspect have with police?
I'm sorry?
What, if any, kind of history does the suspect
Those
have?
are things that we'll be talking about at the arraignment.
How did the pandemic change the course of the investigation in particular? And how did the pandemic present another challenge?
Well, obviously, it's more difficult to gather with people. There were, you know, this is also obviously a time when many times you are able to see people who are out and about who may have seen things, particularly during November, cold weather, people staying at home more, that lessens it. So that's why we really relied a great deal on a lot of the sort of more forensic pieces, the forensic testing, the surveillance, the cell phone records, those pieces of information. Thank you all.